Hey everybody, we're back at Red Rock STN Sportsbook. He's Jason, I'm Chucky. It's the sports betting podcast, Bookends. We finished week 0 in college football last week, but now the fun really starts, Jay. You've got week 1, all the games, great matchups going on, and we're just going to dive right into it, okay, and have some fun. Let's start with a little Colorado-Buffalo football against TCU. Now, you ask about Colorado. We know Deion's the big story there. They're playing TCU. They're 3-touchdown underdogs. TCU's ranked 17th in the country. Last year, Colorado started 0-5, made the coaching change, finished 1-11. Only 10 scholarship players has Deion returned, but they're all the hype right now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think this is a game we would have circled and to be talking about. And obviously, Deion Sanders changes that and what he's bringing to Colorado and the attitude he's bringing to Colorado. But we have no idea what they're actually going to look like on the field. They've got 114 guys on their team.
It's a complete overhaul.
86 of those guys are brand new to the University of Colorado. So he's brought in a lot of transfers. He brought a lot of guys, obviously, in from the success that he had at Jackson State. But he's going up against a TCU team that we just saw play in the national championship. Now, again, they got beat up a little bit by Georgia in that game. A kind of surprise, big semifinal winner over Michigan. But this game last year, TCU won by 25. They're about a 3-touchdown favorite, so we'll see if Deion can kind of get Colorado to that spot. And they've got another tough game Colorado does the following week against Nebraska. So there's going to no rest for them and being in the national spotlight's good. But it's going to be very, very interesting to see all this hype that Deion's brought to Colorado if they can perform on the field to kind of back up all the things that he's been talking about.
It may not be initially. Anytime you overhaul a team like that, it usually takes a little bit of time, but there's been so much hype that they've been a team that have been bet to win the college championship, to go over in their win totals, to win their conference. That's kind of been the amazing thing for me, is that how polarizing Deion is, making all these changes, bringing all these new kids, only 10 scholarship players, yet the public has backed them a little bit so far.
It's surprising because TCU is not, I don't think they're a flash in the pan of a team
Agreed.
that got there one time. I think that they're building a program that can compete on a national level consistently each year.
Let's take a look at number 21, North Carolina against South Carolina. North Carolina is under a field goal favorite in this game.
Well, it's a battle of the quarterbacks. Drake May, who's expected to be a top 5 pick in next year's draft, obviously quarterback for North Carolina. They have an offensive coordinator change, but we still expect North Carolina to throw the ball all over the place. Going up against Spencer Rattler, once Oklahoma quarterback, transfers to South Carolina. South Carolina finished the year really, really strong last year. This is why you see such a short number. Played in Charlotte on the neutral site, so this will set the tone for both of these two teams. But both of these two teams should have very good offenses. We should see a high-scoring game here.
And then number 3, Ohio State plays at Indiana. Ohio State's a big number here. What do you think about that game?
Well, again, Ohio State, as we talk about all the kind of big teams. We talk about the teams that are supposed to be playing in these playoffs and going for a national championship. Ohio State, Georgia, Alabama, all going to be coming with new quarterbacks. Ohio State names their new quarterback in Kyle McCord. He's probably got the best wide receiver in the country in Marvin Harrison Jr., and obviously Ohio State is loaded at the running back position as well. Indiana never truly has a whole lot to offer. They lost this game 56-14, so they got blown out by 42 last year. That's why you see Ohio State around a 30-point favorite, and obviously they want to put up those stats and get these guys, again, in the Heisman conversation. In particular, Marvin Harrison Jr. We haven't seen a wide receiver kind of leapfrog. It's been a quarterback-dominated position.
He's definitely been hyped.
But Marvin Harrison Jr. is one of those rare wide receivers that if he's able to put up big numbers, you could look at him in the Heisman conversation.
And I think this next game is probably the marquee game of the weekend in college football, and that's LSU and Florida State. They played an epic game last season where Florida State won by 1 point. Both these two teams are getting some love, though, in the future book. I think when you look at the top 3 or 4 teams in the country, right after that, these two teams kind of circle in there or fall in there with Southern Cal, getting a lot of love in this game here. What do you think?
Well, you talk exactly why they're getting the love and why people are looking at them is because of the experience at the quarterback position for both these two teams. Sitting at number 5 and number 8, if they can have solid seasons, and we don't see that expectation from the leapfrog of the quarterback position at Georgia, Alabama, these are two teams that can sneak in. Jalen Daniels, quarterback once at Arizona State, transfers to LSU, was absolutely fantastic, got better as the season went on. Remember, it was Brian Kelly's first year at LSU. They lost this game. You talked about it, 24-23 last year.
Great game.
Jaden Daniels took them down the field in the last minutes of the game, and actually Florida State blocked the extra point that would have tied the game up and probably put the game into overtime. Jordan Travis is the quarterback for Florida State. He's in his 6th year. Saw Florida State finish out an excellent season. They are loaded all over the field. This game's in Orlando. Again, another neutral site game, but number 5, number 8, and an under a field goal spread. This is the game that everybody should be gearing up to watch this weekend.
Yeah, I think it's the best game of the weekend in college football. I want to finish up with Wisconsin and Buffalo. And the reason we're really looking at Wisconsin is because of the coaching change.
Yeah, Wisconsin goes to a 28-point favorite, almost a 4-touchdown favorite here against Buffalo. I'm excited for Wisconsin. As much as we're Chicago guys, Illinois, Notre Dame, I'm seeing a change in what Wisconsin's trying to accomplish here. Bring in Luke Fickell, who had a ton of success at Cincinnati, brought that program up to national ranks. He goes and gets offensive coordinator Phil Longo, who was the offensive coordinator for North Carolina, and kind of that air raid. So what did you call it, John? The dairy raid?
Yeah.
Dairy raid.
The dairy raid is that we're not going to see that, and we should see the ground and pound from Wisconsin with Braylon Allen, who's a top running back in the country. But I think that we're going to see
That's
a lot.
all you're used to seeing, though, is the ground and pound.
Tanner Mordecai is the a senior, maybe a super senior quarterback that transfers from SMU. Again, a throwing team with a lot of passing. Transfers to Wisconsin with now the offensive coordinator change. They get 4 wide receivers that transfer from other places in the country. So really look for Wisconsin to open things up and not be your kind of, we'll call it your grandfather's Badgers. We're going to see a lot more error on the batter team, and they're gonna threaten in this Big Ten. Should Ohio State or Michigan slip at all, I expect Wisconsin to be right there.
There's a lot of great college football games this week. We just touched on a few, but I think now's such a great time to talk about the app too. With all these games, early start times on Saturday. You've got games on Sunday as well, and on Monday. We know it's a holiday weekend. Everybody's busy. It's a great time to get signed up for STN Sports. You got that big $500 bonus still going on.
Yeah, deposit up. Get to earn up to $500. Deposit whatever your deposit is. You're going to get 10% in a deposit amount, and it still have time this week. College last man standing is not included in this week, so we mirror up both college last man standing and pro last man standing to start with the start of the NFL season. So you still have time to sign up for college. College is, again, a guaranteed $100,000. Pro is guaranteed $150,000. $25 an entry. Buy 4, get a 5th entry free. Last man standing is it's an exciting contest to play. Win, advance to the next week. See how long you can last. And again, those big guarantees out there of $100,000 and $150,000 for only $25.
We know there's some great contests out there that are some big money contests, but huge entry fees. I think what's great about Last Man Standing, guys, is it's a $25 entry fee. For $100, you have 5 opportunities in either the pro or the college, or both, for $200 to cash out in those two. So I think they're really kind of cool for the smaller entry fee. They're great contests. They've been our kind of signature contest for a real long time. The guests love them. They're a lot of fun. Don't forget, you still have a week to get signed up for both Last Man Standings.
Yeah, and you still all the time to get your college football futures, whether it's over/under season wins, to win a conference, to win a division within a conference. All those things are open. Look on the app. Again, our team has just been flooding the app with props. Even in college football, look for some expanding menu college football props. We're putting up quarterback props. You saw last week Caleb Williams for USC, his total touchdown passes. Sam Hartman for Notre Dame, his total touchdown passes. So the team's going to continue to expand on the college football props. You'll see those players a lot more, probably quarterback
for
driven
May and North Carolina,
stuff like that.
But
look for the touchdown passes, look for yardage for the top college players.
Yeah, so don't forget, again, a full slate of college football this week. This is week 1. So we're going to end this segment now, and we're going to come back and dive into kind of pro football. We're still a week away from the start of the regular season, but some kind of cool storylines, and then we'll finish up with one of our favorite segments, and that's the fantasy football segment. We'll be right back on the Sports Betting Podcast, Bookends.
Guess what? It's football season, baby. And you know what that means. It's time to bet your buns off. And when it comes to sports betting, you better bet with the STN Sports app. I'm talking football, all the fights, men's and women's basketball, men's and women's soccer ball. We've got it all. And with our 14 convenient sign-up locations around town, it's no wonder they call me the Queen of Convenience. Because when I bet with STN, I feel like royalty. So what in the heck are you waiting for? Download the STN Sports app today and trust the local favorite.
Hey everybody, we're back at Red Rock's Racing Sportsbook for the sports betting podcast Bookends. Now we're going to dive into pro football a little bit. I think, we're still a week away, Jay, over a week away from week one. But the storyline for me, as teams have kind of got down to that 53-man roster, is the youth movement at quarterback. You look at DTR and who he beat out in Cleveland, Tyson Bagent, and who he beat out with Chicago. Clayton Tune might be the starting quarterback for the Cardinals. You saw a lot of veteran guys who had experience that were released, if it's a Trevor Siemian or a P.J. Walker or a Colt McCoy, guys that have won games in pro football released for unproven young quarterbacks. If any of these starters goes down, you're going to see a huge adjustment in point spreads on their games.
Well, in particular, the one that you talked about that is still leaving me with my mind boggled as to what the Arizona Cardinals are doing.
Right.
In Colt McCoy being released.
He's played well.
They're going to go with Clayton Tune or potentially the newly acquired Josh Dobbs, who they got from Cleveland in the trade. I know we're talking about Murray not being back for probably 6 weeks, but it doesn't seem like, to me, Arizona is putting their best foot forward here to start the season if they're going to start a rookie in Clayton Tune or a fall-off, journeyman quarterback and kind of Dobbs.
He's only been in camp for a short time.
In the backup position.
Right.
They start the year at the Washington Commanders. Saw that line go from 6 to now a touchdown. It won't surprise me at all if it goes north of a touchdown. And for those of you that looking for your spot fantasy defense maybe in week one, look at the Commanders because I'm just
or your eliminator contest.
I just don't know what Arizona is doing at the quarterback position, waiting for Murray, but all of those guys, in your Arizona offense, you have to question from a fantasy standpoint, and just questioning it alone. What are the Cardinals doing? Are they really trying to tank and finish last? And they've got some draft picks. They can go get Caleb Williams,
right.
Who'd obviously like to go back and connect with the coach, but I don't know what that means for Kyler Murray, and I'm just disappointed to see as we're going into week one of the season, the Arizona Cardinals are already in a position where they're not putting their best foot forward. Colt McCoy was their best guy to lead this team until Kyler Murray got back.
Well, I think it's interesting, too, is because not only do they have their own pick in the draft, but they have the Texans pick, too. If you remember, they traded back up to get Will Anderson. So they got a polarizing young player on offense and defense. So, they're going to have those two picks now. It's going to be interesting to see, depending on when Murray comes back, how he produces, if he's somebody that this regime didn't draft, if he ends up getting dealt in the offseason. They could have 3 potentially top 5 or top 6 picks next year.
Yeah, to your point with the youth movement, obviously we're going to see Richardson for the Colts,
right.
Stroud for the Texans. So we're going to see Bryce Young for Carolina. We're going to see some rookie quarterbacks, and we're going to see rookie quarterback growing pains. So I do think we're going to see some bet against these rookie quarterbacks.
They've already been, though.
Yeah, and we're going to be praying for these guys to play well, to come into games and cover.
Yeah, I think we've seen that in all 3 games already. Those games move up a little bit. I think when you look at kind of storylines going into week one, Damar Hamlin, phenomenal story. I mean, we all kind of watched the injury occur on the primetime game against Cincinnati last year. I mean, I know from our side of the counter, our thoughts and prayers were with him and his family and hoping he'd be okay. And what a remarkable story that he made the 53-man roster for the Bills.
Yeah, that opening Monday night game has got storylines all abound, and it'll be good to see Hamlin back on the field. And obviously, when he goes and makes that first play, even though we're going to be in New York, I would imagine we see a loud cheer from all the fans for Damar Hamlin from that standpoint. But we see Joe Burrow back at practice this week. Obviously, he had the injury early in camp. He's now back in, so you kind of can regain your faith maybe in the Bengals from that standpoint. We've seen that line come down, even go as far as the Browns being favored in that opening game to now the Bengals going back to be favored. But Josh Jacobs, the other big signing for the Raiders. We talked about Jonathan Taylor not able to find a trade partner, going to sit out the first 4 games. They're going to be on the PUP list for the first 4 games at least. Who knows how much longer that goes in. But really, Josh Jacobs, from a local standpoint, from our Raiders standpoint, kind of held out throughout the preseason, was able to come to the deal, didn't play any preseason games, but obviously we know the workload that he had last year, the comfortableness he has in that offense. Didn't get to work with Jimmy G from a quarterback standpoint, but I expect to see the same Josh Jacobs, and Josh Jacobs getting a heavy load of running the football football there, as well as catching balls out of the backfield. So a really good signing that should give the Raiders offense a little bit more of a comfort level.
Right. I think the Jonathan Taylor story is the really important one, though, because you look at that offense now with Richardson, and you lose what was that safety valve. It was Jonathan Taylor who's going to run 25 times, take some pressure off of you. Now that's not going to be the case. We've already seen an impact on that line. Not only is it a young quarterback, but without Jonathan Taylor now, we've seen that line go up to 5 with Jacksonville. I think we're going to be rooting for all three of those teams early and often this year. We'll see how these three young quarterbacks, as Jay mentioned, Stroud, Richardson, and Young perform. But so far, the point spreads have moved against all three early on in week 1. All right, guys, we're getting ready to jump into one of our favorite segments. Jay and I love the Fantasy Football Fever segment. But before we do, something else we're going to have available this weekend.
Oh, parlay cards. Obviously, everybody loves the parlay cards that we have. We have our ties win, half point, teaser, mega teaser, first half parlay card. They'll be out this week starting with the college football this week. They'll also have the first week of pro football in it. So you'll have college and pro on this week's parlay cards, not only at the properties, but also available on the mobile app. All of those parlay cards are also available on the mobile app. So for all you parlay card lovers, it's back. It's time to go. Parlay cards will be out on Thursday morning, mobile on Wednesday night, on over-the-counter on Thursday morning, and that'll be consistent throughout the year. So parlay cards Wednesday nights or over-the-counter on Thursday mornings.
That's always one of the most frequently asked questions about football season. When do the cards come out? And you always know it's football season because everybody's walking around with those cards. So we're excited about it as well. All right, Fantasy Football Fever, wide receivers, tight ends. We did quarterbacks, we did running backs. Let's dive into wide receivers. We know the league has become more of a passing league. Wide receivers are going in almost every fantasy draft. Number 1, who's your most overrated?
Well, I think I've been shocking everybody with my overrated when I went to Josh Allen with my overrated quarterback, and I'm going to go my most overrated wide receiver, and it's, I think, the fantasy guru in the world of fantasy football, Matthew Berry. It's his ride or die this year. It's his guy that he's saying you got to have on your fantasy team, and that's Amon St. Brown for the Detroit Lions. He's going drafting at the end of the first round, early second round. I'm seeing him drafted above guys like A.J. Brown, above the Devontae Adams. And while I like St. Brown, and I do like the Lions offense with him in it, they play poor secondaries in the Vikings. They play poor secondaries in the Bears. They get to play the Chiefs on the opener. To me, Amon St. Brown, though, still isn't that elite top wide receiver. From a PPR standpoint, he's going to get a lot of catches, but he only has 6 touchdowns last year. His top games were like 122 yards, 119 yards, 116 yards. So he doesn't put up those big monster games. And when we talk about guys like A.J. Brown had 181, 156, 155, 119. Devontae Adams, 177, 153, 146, 141. Amon St. Brown hasn't been that type of player because he doesn't have that downfield average. He averages 11 yards a catch on his yards a catch last year. The elite receivers are more in the 14 to 15 range, with A.J. Brown topping out at 17. So, he's there from a yards, receptions, and target standpoint. What really hurts him is the touchdowns. He had 6 touchdowns last year, and I don't think he can be drafted as the elite wide receiver until he can get to that double-digit touchdown mark with his underneath type routes and not the vertical game as part of his game. I just don't trust Amon St. Brown at the back end of round 1 or early in round 2. I think he's a late round 2, early round 3 type guy.
I think, too, they draft Jahmyr Gibbs, and he's so much different than Jamal Williams was coming out of the backfield. He's going to be that guy that is going to poach a lot of third down receptions because he's going to be used in that role a little bit more. Their other receiver right now is Josh Reynolds, who's not going to really scare anybody, and Jameson Williams won't be back until week 7. So your defenses can now really key on St. Brown as well.
Yeah, it won't surprise me at all if you see a zone coverage on him with a cornerback locking him up short and a safety over the top to kind of cut down on him and force the Lions to go somewhere else, maybe the young tight end and Laporta or the guys out of the backfield. And I'm not saying Amon St. Brown isn't a dynamic player. Love him. I think he has some success this year. I just don't like where he's being drafted because he's being drafted as an elite wide receiver where there's 3, 4, 5, 6 guys that are in that category, and I don't know he's there yet. Doesn't mean he can't do it this year. Hopefully he makes that step for you guys that have already drafted him. I don't like him at that point in time at the back end of that first round.
My overrated, and it pains me to say it, is Cooper Kupp. He's coming back off the injury. He's been injured a lot over the last couple of years, but it's not so much a product of Cooper Kupp as maybe that offense. We've heard rumblings that Matt Stafford isn't really gelling with a lot of the young players on the team. They seem to be in a little bit of a rebuild. We know they still have Cam Akers at running back. You've got a young Van Jefferson at wide receiver. But I think now that, like you said with St. Brown, defenses can really cater to what Cooper Kupp is. And I think although he's going in the top 5, maybe top 7 in all fantasy drafts, and it wouldn't stun me to see him lead the league in receiving, I just think he's a little bit overrated now because I'm worried about the surrounding cast, not so much about Cooper Kupp.
Well, and the injury. I mean, I guess with any player that you're drafting, injury is a major concern, but a guy that's coming off an injury and then got injured again here in the preseason camp, probably more of a precaution than a true injury.
Right.
But obviously that's where that question lies in. And who knows how strong Matt Stafford's arm is as well, and what kind of offense they're actually going to be able to run. You did talk about they are going to be down in games a lot, so the potential for them to even throw even more is probably there. But again, Kupp is a scary pick when you're picking in that 4 or 5.
He could have a great year
range.
like St.
Sure.
Brown could. I just think there's some question marks there because of the surrounding cast right now and the fact the team is kind of quasi-rebuilding. There even was some, as crazy as it sounds, there was some, kind of mild rumblings about would they trade him in the offseason because of what they could have gotten for him. All right, now let's go with who's the most underrated guy?
Well, I'm going to go with a guy that's sitting kind of on the back end, somewhere ranked in that maybe 13, 14, 15 receiver coming off the board, and that's Chris Olave. I think he's in for a monster season in his second season with the Saints changing quarterbacks. They had Winston and Dalton down there last year. Saints quarterbacks only had 2 300-yard games.
Right.
And now he gets Derek Carr to go down there, and when Derek Carr gets locked in on a receiver, he's going to feed that receiver. And I'm not comparing Chris Olave to Devontae Adams at this time, but I don't see Michael Thomas being that guy that Carr kind of keys on. I think Carr is going to key to Olave. And when you go back to look at the number of games that Devontae Adams had 8 over 100-yard games with Derek Carr last year, and I can just see the Saints feeding Olave, and again, he's a guy that can get a lot of catches, but he's also got great speed, and he plays that vertical game, and we know how Carr likes to throw that deep ball. I think he's going to get 2 to 3 shots a game to Olave so he can get those big touchdown scores.
I'll give you a great stat on Olave. Last year, he led the league in attempts of 20 yards or greater. They just couldn't get him the ball. So they threw it to him a lot, but with that quarterback situation there, they couldn't get it to him. Now with Carr there, I think that changes, and I think he really could be a quarterback that kind of catapults into the top 10.
Yeah, and
he's a wide receiver.
He's not one of those guys that's going to get you 100 catches like these guys at the top of the draft. He's going to slip probably down somewhere in more of the 80 to 90 catch range. But again, I think he should have a good distance, average distance to his catch, and hoping for a lot of touchdowns with Carr taking those deep shots.
For me, the underrated guy is T. Higgins. You look at Jamar Chase, and here's a guy that in some drafts is going number 1 overall. He's probably not going past the 5th spot in any draft. Yet you look at T. Higgins, who's not even being picked many times until maybe late in the 3rd round, early 4th. Last year, Jamar Chase, 1,046 yards receiving. T. Higgins, 1,029. Jamar Chase, 86 receptions. T. Higgins, 74. Jamar Chase, 9 touchdowns. T. Higgins, 7 touchdowns. Chase did all his damage in basically 3 games. I think from a consistency standpoint, 2 straight years, you've seen the second half of the season, T. Higgins outperformed Chase. I think where the value is with T. Higgins in the 3rd or 4th round is just tremendous compared to where it is for Jamar Chase.
T. Higgins also in a contract year, going to look to get paid. So you got a motivated guy that wants to put up big stats there, and obviously Burrow's health and being back on the field bodes well for Higgins.
All right, now how about
I got my sleeper. I'm going to give you my sleeper. I'm going to go deep down the board for my sleeper, and I'm going to go Jahan Dotson, second-year wide receiver for the Washington Commanders. Limited time last year, was injured for several games, but he was able to put up 7 touchdowns in his time on the field, and he's not a big receiver. He's 5'11", 190 pounds, something like that. But to find the end zone 7 times and now go to a Washington Commander offense that last year was run, and occasionally they would find Dotson and McLaren, to now Eric Bieniemy, who was the offensive coordinator for the Kansas City Chiefs, interviews for some head coaching
Is that
jobs.
the chip he's wiping off his shoulder?
I've talked about it before.
Yeah,
I think he's got a big chip on his shoulder. The Commanders are going to start Sam Howell, strong-arm quarterback from Carolina. They got Brian Robinson and Gibson in the backfield. But I really look for
Logan
them.
Thomas at tight end.
I really
and Curtis
look for
Samuel
them,
in the slot.
I really look for them to throw the ball. And I think Dotson's going to be a big surprise for them. The schedule shapes up well. And I think he's a guy that they'll look for around the end zone as well, despite his stature. But most importantly is I think that Commander offense changes from ground and pound to opening up a little bit. And Bieniemy, we know the creativeness. Everybody says it was Andy Reid and it was Patrick Mahomes, and that's why Bieniemy's carrying that chip on his shoulder. So he wants to show what he knows in that passing game, and I think Dotson benefits from that.
I know we're talking more about wideouts, but really when you talk about the Commanders and all those young skill position players, you can make a case that that offense has the potential with Sam Howell to be dynamic if he's just good. So if you're looking for maybe a sleeper quarterback in super flex leagues or 2 quarterback leagues, maybe it's Sam Howell on that offense.
Sam Howell, now again, you're going way down the chart to take
Right.
him, especially the guys in the super flex. I know we're not on quarterbacks, but if you want a sleeper quarterback, go check out Brock Purdy. He's going to surprise
But again,
everybody.
very talented players at the skill position level
Correct.
across the board.
Correct.
All right, my sleeper now. When I look for a sleeper, I'm looking for more than just a guy in the top 20. I'm looking for much more. That's why I'm looking at DJ Moore and Sky Moore. I think DJ Moore, who led the league last year in receptions or targets inside 20 yards. The quarterback who targeted receivers the most inside 20 yards, Justin Fields. Where's DJ Moore now? With the Chicago Bears. I think with the Toney injury at wide receiver for the Chiefs, and we know that Hill's gone, that Mahomes is going to look for that vertical game. And to me, Sky Moore's that guy now who they're going to move around the field. And I think Sky Moore can have a huge season in that Chiefs offense. So I'm looking at both those guys as my absolute sleepers. But I'm going to throw you one more, and that's tight end who played high school football in Vegas, Dalton Kincaid for the Buffalo Bills. We know that Knox is there at tight end. They've got Gabe Davis. They've got Stephon Diggs. Who's their slot guy? They just cut Jamison Crowder. Their slot guy in practice has been Dalton Kincaid. He's going to create mismatches for defenses up and down the board from the slot. I think Kincaid will be used more as a slot receiver. I love Dalton Kincaid as a sleeper tight end to put great numbers on the board.
Before I get to my sleeper tight end, I'm going to give you Moore. And I know you like Sky Moore and you like DJ Moore. And I'm going to tell you which Moore is going to be better than those Moore. And that's Elijah Moore, the slot receiver for the Cleveland
love Moore.
Browns. Comes over from a dynamic 2 years ago with the Jets, was absolutely fantastic, fell out of favor with the Jets. Browns pick him up. He's been the showcase of their camp. Elijah Moore has been the highlight reel of Browns camp. I think Deshaun Watson finds him a bunch. I think they find a way to creatively use him in the offense coming out of the backfield with the fact that they kind of have Hunt and they have Chubb, but no more Kareem Hunt. I can see Elijah Moore being used creatively out of the backfield, but look for Elijah Moore to have some big numbers for the Browns. And from a tight end standpoint, I'm going to go to Kellen Moore and the Chargers. The offensive coordinator for the Chargers, for the Chargers, comes over from Dallas, where we saw Dalton Schultz really shine in the Dallas Cowboys offense. I think he had 17 touchdowns over the last 3 years, probably averaged somewhere around 65 receptions and 700 yards. And now you talk about all these weapons that the Chargers have at the receiver position in Williams and Johnston and Keenan Allen and Eckler out of the backfield, but everybody's not drafting Gerald Everett.
Right.
And with Kellen Moore's ability to utilize the tight end, I really think that Gerald Everett could be in a big season with the Chargers. He had, I want to say, 57 receptions last year, which was a career high for him. And now we bring in this Kellen Moore, who we saw, make Dalton Schultz a producer. Look for Everett at the back end of your drafts. Could be a sleeper tight end for you.
I think both tight ends, in Kincaid and Everett's case, it's potentially they don't get drafted or they're way down the board. So if you really need kind of a fill-in tight end or a backup tight end, or you just ignored the position, I think both these two guys can be valuable assets. So don't forget, guys, when it comes to STN Sports, STN Mobile, we give you more. There's a lot more props, a lot more cool stuff to bet. And we've had fun talking about football, but we're almost in September now, and it's toward the end of baseball season, and there is a huge gap between the good teams and the bad teams, and we've really seen it of late as baseball has really kind of flipped the script where the bad teams are bad and the good teams are awfully good.
Well, from the sportsbook standpoint, we want you to stop betting baseball and start betting football.
Ugly.
Because baseball has been absolutely atrocious. The betting public, you guys have been doing absolutely fantastic. I guess you just circle the Dodgers every day, you circle the Braves every day.
Against the Royals,
just watch
against the Rockies, against the A's.
Watch the winners flow in. But no joke, the baseball has been absolutely fantastic for the betting public. It's been easy pickings on the winners. You talk about these teams that have made the trade deadline deals and kind of watch their teams go away. The bad teams have gotten worse and the good teams have gotten better, and that separation is causing some wide disparity and easy pickings of winners in baseball, and finding those winners on the run line where they're really hitting the paydays, getting the -1.5 with a even money to plus price. And so we're seeing a lot of baseball tickets being cashed. And like I said, hopefully you start to not pay attention to baseball and jump into football, but a lot of winners out there in baseball right now.
I think that's the big difference, and we've talked about it. When you look at basketball and hockey, Jay, the point spread becomes the ever equalizer. You look at Team A in either professional or college sports and say, I know Team A is better, but are they better than X? But in baseball, you simply have to just pick the winner for the most part. It doesn't matter how big of a favorite the Dodgers are or how big of a favorite the Braves are. You're just asking them to win. And when you're betting parlays, in many cases, those are throw-in teams, but those parlays really pay well when they're 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 teamers.
Yeah, and baseball is going to be great coming down here in the month of September. The pennant races that we have, the number of teams that are still involved in both the National League pennant race, the American League pennant race, a couple of the division races, the Houston Astros and the Rangers and the Mariners.
Yeah.
I mean, that division alone is going to be absolutely fantastic.
How about the wild card race in the National League, too?
So
really fun.
Lots to really tune into outside of the football weekends. The baseball from here on out is going to be absolutely great, fantastic.
Yeah, it's going to be really fun for the holiday weekend. And I know we stress a lot, and we encourage you guys to get signed up for STN Sports and how great it is. I still think it's a great tool, especially if you're home. But we still love it when you guys come out here and experience everything that we have to offer. Not only at Red Rock, but all of our racing sports books, our Wildfire gaming properties. It's just a fun time of year to be in this industry. And I think when football rolls around, kind of the atmosphere and the sounds that echo from this department are contagious throughout the casino. So football's here. As you can tell, we're excited about it. Bookends will be back every week now, at least once a week, maybe twice a week, to highlight some fun stuff. So you guys have a safe and fun holiday. We look forward to seeing you guys. Don't forget Last Man Standing. Don't forget the $500 bonus for STN Sports. Have a great holiday, and we'll see you guys next week on the Sports Betting Podcast. Bookends.